Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Hattie Hartman. I am Sustainability Editor at the AJ. Welcome to this webinar on the design of entrances, hosted by INTRAsystems in partnership with the AJ. Because entrances are such a crucial aspect of how we understand and experience buildings, they are a key design focus on every project. We have an excellent lineup of speakers today, and I hope you will come away from this session with some practical suggestions that you can put into action in your own projects and some inspiration too. We've had a lot of interest in this webinar, and we have a lot to pack into 1 hour. The format will be a 6 to 7 minute presentation by each of our panelists, followed by a chaired discussion by me, and then we'll open up for questions from listeners. So please put your questions in the Q&A. That's where I'll be looking for questions, and I'll aim to answer as many as possible. Entrance design has occupied pride of place throughout the history of architecture, and it's just as important today with many more technical and security requirements to be considered. We're fortunate to have some expert speakers to present their projects and share different angles on this topic. Our first speaker is Sam Jacob. He will be followed by Sarah and Radostina from Morrow and Lane, then Joanna from TP Bennett's, and finally Aaron from INTRAsystems. Architect, academic, and exhibition designer, Sam Jacob is the director of Sam Jacob Studio, a collaborative practice known for its bold and often provocative work across a range of scales from public realm to buildings to objects. Recent projects include Ivy Street in Hoxton, an office space for Art Review magazine in Clerkenwell, and the exhibition design for Morris Mania, an exhibition opening next week at the William Morris Gallery in Walthamstow that runs until September. Sam teaches at the Institute of Architecture in Vienna, and from 1990 to 2013, he was a director of FAT Architecture. He's going to talk to us about what makes an outstanding entrance, with a focus on his recent Cromwell Road entrance at the Victoria and Albert Museum, completed in 2022. Over to you, Sam. I'll give you a 1 minute warning after 6 minutes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Hattie. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Press that, first of all, and then press that, and then that, and then let's see. How's that? Up, running?
Yep, looks good.
Great. Okay, so I was going to start with the first thing anyone taught me about architecture. This is Andy McMillan, who was the head of school at the Mackintosh School of Architecture. And when we were in lowly first year, he came to give us our first talk about architecture. In fact, that was the only time we saw him in the whole degree. He spent most of the time smashing up models in the diploma school. But anyway, he imparted this advice to us. If it will click onward. Yeah, here. He said, all architecture is about the top, the middle, and the bottom. It's true for skyscrapers, and it's true for garden gates, said Andy McMillan. And you know, maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but it was a good place to start. You could say the same maybe for entrances, that maybe it's not so much about the vertical, but it's not something that's more horizontal. Maybe something that plays out more in space. So that might be true for Palladio on the left, or for a average terraced house on the right. But the sequence, the way in which you approach a building, enter it, and then find yourself in the rest of it, is really key in terms of how architecture organizes. You could think of it maybe like the first line of a novel. Last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. Maybe the best opening line in a novel. I mean, other contenders, true, but like here you think like, wow, what? Or what? So it sets the scene, it draws you in. So it kind of operates in a sense very, you could say, almost architecturally. I'd say in my work, there's a lot of thinking about thresholds and entrances and how you move from one space to another. This is in studio for Yinka Ilori, the designer, with a kind of double sliding door. I don't know quite how to describe it. The way a gate works here, the address becomes a kind of graphic / security device that recalls Studio 54. 54 is the street number of the project. Or a lot in exhibition design. We do a lot of exhibition design, and that's really, the entrance is really important. It's the point where you move from one world into another world. This is one we did where you can go and play video games in the basement of the Science Museum. So it's a perforated screen, like a billboard, but also a little bit like retro computer graphics. Fear and Love at the Design Museum, the whole space was formed with curtains and sort of draws you in, and you have an intro text and in this case, a tactile map. So you kind of feel like you're being prepared for the world you're going into. Of course, exhibition designs are kind of extreme forms of architecture in a sense. They're overly atmospheric. They're a little bit like theatre or this for the V&A in Shenzhen. Again, you get the kind of graphic intro, they're telling you what's happening. And here you get glimpses into the space you're about to enter. And on the left is a dichroic sheets of glass. So you get kind of a hint of it. You don't really see it, but you can get an impression of what's behind. Well, this for the Science Museum in London, entrance to an exhibition, surprisingly, about the sun. Here it's the kind of, it's like as if you cut through the sun, like a geography diagram of a star or planet. So this is the kind of cores of the sun, which become an archway which you enter. Or this one with the graphic designer Barnbrook, Jonathan Barnbrook and co, for horror at Somerset House, where we turned, I think this is a bit of Inigo Jones still, I'm not 100% sure, into what was called Hellmouth. So that the archway becomes, you know, kind of, a mouth. Other parts become, but you feel like you're going into something. It kind of dramatizes that moment of walking over the threshold. You could say, in some senses, it's like the trailer to a film, or like in the old days. This is Saul Bass, the opening credits for Vertigo. Anyway, we can watch a bit of this. How are we doing for time, Hattie?
You've got a couple of minutes left.
Okay, cool. You get the idea, right? And that from that you then go into the narrative of the architecture behind. This is Lawrence Stern's diagram of the story, of the narrative plot of Tristram Shandy, like different ways you can work. Onto the V&A. So this is the V&A, Aston Webb entrance on Cromwell Road. So the big bit, big grand bit of the old V&A. It's a lot about making a statement. It's a lot about being an entrance to a world behind it, to a museum. This is the red route, which was a guide given to early visitors to the V&A so they could see the highlights of the stuff behind the entrance. But even across the facade, you see how the building's like telling you what it is, telling you what it believes in. You know, there's the crown, Queen Victoria's imperial crown on the top of the building. Values, here we go, you know, architecture, knowledge, inspiration, represented through sculptures.
About a minute, Sam.
Great designers. And really what we were trying to do was to make an entrance which talked about the values of the V&A. We made a new entrance door which uses glass as if it's coming from the, you know, echoing the glass collection. Also echoing the architecture of the building, the sort of verticality. This became pieces of furniture. Then ceramics in the toilets, which echoed the ceramics collection. Here are pieces, digitally printed tiles, which take figures from their collection and reproduce them. And then the last piece is referring to their strong connection to Wedgwood. who's on the outside of the building. And we collected, I think, about a ton of waste jasperware from the Wedgwood factory in Stoke, crushed it. It all looks perfect, right? Like, but to Wedgwood, this is like, these were not good enough. And use that to make a terrazzo, which we used on the walls of the toilet. So in terms of making an entrance here, it's about, I guess, taking some of the narratives and some of the qualities of not just the architecture itself, but also the kind of the ethos of the V&A, and trying to manifest that in ways which turn some of the most functional parts of the museum into something which has a kind of cultural resonance. Like, this is the V&A, even when you're doing the most base of human activity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such a lovely project, really lovely project. I love the frown at Somerset House, frown or whatever it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now this is going to be completely different. Thank you so much for that, Sam. Next up, we have Sarah Mateo and Radostina Stoyanova of Morrow and Lane, who are going to co-present a project, which is the refurbishment of Alder Castle, a central London building overlooking London Wall, which is currently on site, I think about to complete. The project includes a Cat A refurbishment and also a complete reworking of the entry sequence to green the public realm and the approach to the building. And what they have achieved on a very tight site is really quite remarkable. Sarah is an associate at Morrow and Lorraine, joined the practice in 2023 to lead this project after 15 years at Simpson Howe. And originally from Bulgaria, Radostina joined Morrow and Lane in 2019. And recently led the refurbishment of Cobham House, an 8-story office building near St. Paul's. Over to the two of you.
How we do that? Share. Oh, good. Well, I guess I'm just gonna dive in. So we're talking about Alder Castle, which is an existing large office building in the heart of the city. On the map, you can see that it's sort of in the north side of this area. It's dating back from the 1990s. It's an 8-story office building of approximately 90,000 square feet. It's an interesting L-shaped building with a curved glass entrance bay, which is supported by expressive circular columns with that's holding the glass and the steel curtain wall system. It's interesting that actually the entrance is also, so the entrance is also sitting centrally to that bay, and it's literally via a bridge. To the bottom, you can see the actual building, and then you can see the existing entrance over here. I'm going to dive in a little bit into the rich history of the site. We have to the south is the Great One listed church, which is St. Anne and Agnes. While our building is not listed or in conservation area, to the east side over here, we have the London Wall, which is dating back from the 200 AD. And what's interesting is that below that wall are actually the current ruins, which are currently a scheduled monument. And then last but not least, to the left-hand side, which is west of the bridge, we have what's believed to be ruins from Victorian Wall as well. So you can see it's quiet, it's a small germ. There's quite a lot of history in there. So we really appreciated having the opportunity to put something very meaningful and remarkable in there. The brief that we actually had is to create an extension to the existing building that is complementing the building. It doesn't distract from the existing history or oversell the view. What's in here in blue is the extension massing that Sarah is going to dive in just in a bit. We also had to improve the external amenity to the ground floor, to the lower ground floor, and balconies above the extension massing. Part of the brief was also to include improvements to the public realm and large-scale gardens before entering the building, which is something that Peter Williams, landscape architect, has looked at. If you want to see more, it's currently on the planning portal, very exciting document. And you can see all the setting I was talking about, just combined, giving an idea of what we had to consider. And then I'm handed over to Sarah.
Hi. So as Raddy's already touched on, there were many key interventions as part of our brief, but we'll focus on the nose of the building, and where our aim was to enhance the arrival and entrance experience. The challenge was to create this entrance whilst respecting views along Noble Street to the listed building, and also the historic setting of the London Wall, and avoid the new extension looking like it was an add-on across some awkward geometries. We wanted it to look like it had always been embedded, within the fabric of the existing building. We achieved this by following, there's some very strong datum lines along the existing building. And so we created bands or ribbons that formed these sort of balconies. And then there's quite a strong datum on the first floor, the corbel line, and we've continued this and brought it forward to create the canopy to better demarc the entrance. This also acts to break up the new massing, so it's a bit more of a gradual stepping up to the extension. So just taking a step back again to what Raddy's already touched on, the existing entrance is a literal drawbridge across the London Wall. It's there's not a sort of great transition from the historic setting into the building. You cross the bridge and you're straight into the entranceway. It's a bit underwhelming, we felt. So what we did, there's some key moves. We looked to improve this by creating a well-defined entrance with flow of movement, a more delicate transition from the historic setting into the reception space, and finally providing a wow factor as you cross the entrance into the main reception space. So the first key move we looked at was the landscaping. The church gardens were designed by Peter Williams, and he was also the landscape architect on the project. So there's a consistent language of landscaping from the church gardens that flow across the bridge link, the new bridge link, into the building. There's a bit of Instagram versus reality at the moment, because obviously the planting has been planted in the winter where a lot of the plants are dormant, and obviously they need a bit of time to establish. So hopefully by the summer it will look like the picture on the left-hand side. So the next key move was the bridge link. What we did is the extension, we brought the massing forward to the midpoint of the void between the London Wall and the new building, and then created a soft slope into the building through this bridge link. What we also did, there was an opportunity to provide sort of an information board. So as you cross the bridge link, you've got a moment where you can stop and pause, appreciate the settings, the historic settings, look at the information, and then you're drawn under this single-story canopy.
You've got about a minute, Sarah.
Oh yeah, I'm finishing off. So you've got a single-story canopy which sort of draws you under before you step over the threshold into the main reception space, and that allows you, Rad, you can change, to really appreciate the new, the big volume of this new extension and the new reception space. Our choice of materials, we chose very warm, tactile palette, oak, clay, and yeah, of course, as you come through the building, walk across the INTRAsystem matting, and yeah, and that's as it looks as of this week. It's just finished. So, yep, that's it.
This last image is a photograph?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when will it open to the when will it
Already
open?
opened. I think there's still a few finishing touches, but it's opened back to the building users now. Yeah, this
Right.
week.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on, and our next speaker is Joanna Warda, a senior interior designer at TP Bennett. And Joanna will present the practice's work on the Langfield, the retrofit of 2 existing office buildings behind Victoria Station to provide 80,000 square feet of contemporary workspace, as well as she's going to tell us a little bit about TP Bennett's web-based app, AD Lib. I'm not sure how you say it. It's an online library for sourcing and comparing product sustainability data. And I'm very curious to hear about that. I've seen it presented in the AJ 100 Awards, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So it wasn't yet an online platform at that point. It was kind of a questionnaire. So I look forward to hearing about that. Over to you, Joanna.
Let me just share. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Harry, for the introduction. So the Langfield, let me start with that. As you mentioned, it is an 80,000 square feet. It will become an 80,000 square feet of commercial office fit out. It will span across 8 floors. You'll have 4 different terraces. Langfield is located just behind Victoria Station. Actually the name for it came from 2 architects, Langbridge and Bloomfield of Victoria Station, 2 competitive and 2 separate stations in Victoria. And in 1912, the stations merged together to create the Victoria Station as we know today. So we thought the name would be a fun play on those names. So the South Block facade actually is being changed. So about the entrance design, the lower level is underlined by different color brickwork and rhythm of the staggered openings. And the entrance experience actually starts on Gillingham Street. It continues then through a stunning portal with a multitude of frames and textures of the ceiling covers. And at the end of that covered external section, you can see the entrance to the building. So what does it give us actually? What the building has gained through is the increased street presence and the public offering as well. That whole frontal facade will become a, I believe, double height coffee lounge. It will be open for the public. But also it will be available from the entrance reception and divided by the lounge co-working meeting space. So the whole space is essentially designed to nurture both individual and collective experiences and interaction. So that left-hand side, shifting the entrance to the left-hand side actually allowed us to activate the entire side facade of the building. And it allowed us to create a pocket garden at the end of it. So that will also be available and open to local community. So that is becoming an inherent part of the person's journey into the building, essentially, and allows you to connect to the nature. So we are just at the beginning of our concept design for interiors. It's very exciting. We will take from inspiration from the Victoria Station, actually, with the Edwardian and the Victorian influences. So watch this space. But yeah, what makes Langfield a successful project? So not only the aesthetics, but we were fighting really hard to retain as much structure as possible. So majority of the real building structure was retained. All foundations will be reused. Structure facing Gillingham Road actually has been condemned. So it was really difficult to do something about it. That then gave us an opportunity to truly enhance the building's street presence and with that beautiful bricklayed facade. So optimized facade actually gave us reduced energy consumption, but also allowed us to enhance the interior comfort levels, making the building future-proof, contributing to reducing operational carbon. The building will achieve an embodied carbon and whole life carbon that is far outperforming the GLA embodied carbon targets for 2030. So that's great news. But how do you ensure that those targets are met beyond the planning stage? We have implemented strict measures and criteria for contractors within an outline specification document, and underlined and highlighted which ones are the most important to take guidance from. As you can see on the second place, we have an environmental product declaration, and that is very important. Why it's actually important and what does it give us? Well, when you look at how materials are made these days, it's not a simple process. With large-scale global production works, the virgin materials can be from one part of the world, then processed elsewhere and assembled somewhere else completely. So before it even gets to our buildings and sites, it had a whole separate life. So with EPD, which is essentially a standardized document that details environmental impact of a product throughout its life cycle, EPD allows us to understand that embodied carbon beginning of the story all the way to from when it comes out of the factory. So there are stages A1 to A3. Those are the ones that should have the least assumptions. We should know where that transparency, where it's coming from and what the composition is. That's that cradle to gate, what we call this process. So for stages A4, A5, we then order the material product, whatever it is, we ship it to the building on a construction site and install it. So that's where we can really impact. It's hugely important to see where the product is from. If it's shipped from China and this construction site is in Europe, of course, that significantly adds to the carbon footprint. And then use, in general, like all the P stage describes any operational carbon whilst the building is in use. This essentially shows the impact of our decisions across, 5, 10, if it's an office retrofit, office commercial fit out, all the way to
1 minute,
building
Joanna.
lifestyle. Okay, that's I'm going to skip that. Basically, we have huge impact on it. Our early decisions have the power to impact all the above, and is therefore hugely important to understand how EPDs work and find out as much as we can about the product and its potential for reuse and recycle. In UK, 62% UK construction waste is responsible for 62% of waste. That's quite a lot. So we have we have power to implement and ensure that that does not end in a the landfill. So EPDs are extremely hard to read. They can cost a fortune to manufacturers
Extremely.
and suppliers. Yeah, so that we therefore wanted to assure, like, how can we not discriminate against the small companies as well, and all of the products that are out there that are amazing and innovative. This is why we came up with an idea of AdLib. So we wanted to ensure that all of our TP Bennett staff that can access and make informed good choices about what is going into the project. It is essentially a resource database that allows us to make informed decisions when specifying. And the evolution of AdLib actually came from a client project where they wanted to focus on responsible sourcing, focusing on local, social, and ethical building materials. So we therefore developed detailed set of information and questionnaires to send to suppliers. That project charter then evolved into a web-based app. So what else about AdLib? It has been highly commended on AJ100 for several years, actually, in the specifically material sourcing platform category, and it was recognized as an innovative product, which is great news. It is also worth to say that it's a trust-based platform. We send out questionnaire with 65 questions to the suppliers and trust that they will provide correct information. You can search products by name, manufacturer, product time, but also certifications criteria, which is hugely important on projects these days. And we have by now probably thousands of suppliers and products in there, so huge database. But the exciting part about it as well is that version 2 of the platform is currently being developed by us, and we are aiming to make it an open platform available to all later this year. You can scan that QR code as well and look in the interface of the front. So that's that.
Thanks very much, Joanna. That's really, really interesting. I will look forward to hearing more about that. Before we go on to Aaron, I just want to say that there's a very good question here, and I want to give you all a chance to think about it because it's going to be my first question. So somebody has asked, is this event actually about threshold design, i.e. avoiding thermal bridges, weather tightness, accessibility, some of the more technical issues? So I want to be sure we have time for that, and I'm going to come to that. I think Aaron's probably going to touch on some of this in his presentation, but we're gonna be getting on to that afterwards. So Aaron, is our last presenter, and he collaborates with architects, interior designers, and clients on behalf of INTRAsystems to help realize a creative vision. And he's also responsible for delivering INTRAsystems CPD sessions, so he has a lot of contact with designers. And with over a decade of experience, he's worked on projects such as the Shard, the Leadenhall Building, and Tate Modern. Aaron, over to you. 6 minutes, 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Let's get this screen up and running. Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining. So yeah, INTRAsystems, the manufacturers of entrance matting. We're redefining entrances with cutting-edge sustainable entrance matting designs. Our architecture entrance matting combines style with functionality, creating inspiring, clean, and safe environments. As Hattie said, I work with specifiers and designers, but we do work with corporations, retail, and companies, and also large estates like the NHS and London Underground. Anyone who wants a unified and safe entrance design. In principle, entrance matting has 3 key zones. So zone 1 is your primary external matting. Zone 2 is your primary internal matting, and zone 3 is a secondary walk-off area. In practice, that often gets merged together. You might have external matting in the outer half of revolving doors, and then your internal matting would stretch into the building as required for the building usage, building design. You often get asked, how much matting do we need? And there's a few numbers out there. So the British standard says 2.1 meters. The WELL recommendation, which is the WELL standard often used in commercial interiors, says 3 meters. And we often use a rule of thumb of around 4 meters. That allows each foot to land at least twice on the mat and allows for 2 full revolutions of a wheelchair wheel. So you often start at 4 meters, and that'll often reduce or increase depending on the building usage and building style. Wanted to look at the INTRAform DM EcoSwitch product. So it's fantastic what Joanna's been talking about. I do echo the challenge of reading an EPD and also feel the pain of how much they cost small manufacturers like ourselves. But the INTRAform DM EcoSwitch was a product that was born out of actually an inquiry at a seminar several years ago where we wanted to lengthen the circle of life of the product, and we wanted to switch out the insert but retain as much of the product as possible. So often entrance matting is put in place, it gets forgotten about, it wears out, and the client ends up removing the whole lot. But now you can change just the insert and keep the aluminium base profile in place, so that base profile remains in place for years and years and years, and the insert is switched out on an as-needs basis, which for a client is also a lot more cost-effective than changing an entire entrance matting system. It was the first of its kind. It's the first time we've had a replaceable insert in a heavy-duty entrance matting system, something we're really excited about. in terms of creating a longer circle of life, and also has lots of benefits for clients as well from a cost perspective. When they need to replace the inserts, a lot more cost effective than putting new matting in place. The main thing I wanted to focus on today, though, was ways to play around with entrance matting, if you like. So it's quite a crucial part of an entrance. It keeps an entrance safe and tidy, and we often get some amazing designs put on our desks. And I wanted to touch on a few of those and open up the realms of possibility to anyone that's designing an entrance at the moment. So inset products like these examples here are a great way to add extra moisture absorption into an entrance. And this is a good example. So we have solid matting to start with, capturing the bulk of the grit and dirt and moisture that comes into an entrance. And then we have inset matting, which gives extra moisture absorption, which is fantastic in bad weather. It removes the need for loose mats to be put down, which are a bit of a maintenance nightmare, not very sightly in any entrance. And there's lots of different ways you can play around with these different inserts. It might be from a design perspective, like it was in this entrance, where the inset squares were very much a form that was carried out throughout the entirety of the reception space, not just part of the entrance. Or maybe colors, where we've got this red linear pattern reflected around the whole entrance on the walls as well. So inset matting is a great way to play around with the entrance, kind of open up the entrance matting texture or color much further into the building. You also have the very straightforward option of just laying the matting at an angle. So a great choice if you have a refurb where you might have an existing mat wall in place already. Laying the matting at an angle, often in a chevron pattern, that creates a much more dynamic creative look and feel to an entrance. Favorite example is Odeon Leicester Square. The Art Deco interior design just was everywhere, and the entrance matting formed part of that interior. So we had bronze anodized finish to the aluminium, 5 different colors in the matting inserts, and just made a huge difference. If this was just standard linear matting, it would have been a real shame. But here it really makes a huge difference to how the matting makes the whole entrance feel. And then we have INTRAShape. So for a long time, entrance matting has been very linear. It took quite a while for the entrance matting manufacturers to realize that flooring no longer needed to be in straight lines. And the INTRAShape is a heavy-duty tile with an aluminium perimeter, and available in lots of different shapes and sizes. In fact, most of the projects we work on, those sizes are tweaked slightly to suit the dimensions of the specific building, the specific design style. And no better example than this one, where we have a heritage building with no entrance mat wall, no entrance matting at all. Needed entrance matting, needed to be a safe and clean entrance. And obviously we wanted to retain that heritage interior feel, and the INTRAShape could do that exactly. So we really reflected the original flooring around that entrance within the INTRAShape design, but still keeping that entrance safe and clean and tidy. So the inset products, thank you. So the inset products are great. The chevron design is just laying the matting at an angle. INTRAShape gives you lots of different options in terms of different shapes. And they're probably the 3 most common ways which we see entrance matting used creatively, but they're not the only ways. There's a few examples here to look at. So logos are another good one. Different colors. We can play around with this in Liverpool Street Station. They wanted some extra branding. Many of you probably walked over these. And this is another one where the shape of the matting really echoed that whole entrance space. So not just looking at matting as a functional product, albeit a very necessary product, actually integrating within the wider design of the entrance. Bit of a whistle-stop tour. We dig into all of that in a lot more detail in our CPD, but hopefully it's opened up a few ideas, even just playing around with different colors or different shapes for entrance matting, although very necessary, can form part of that wider design scheme.
Thank you, Aaron. A huge amount of variety there. Interesting to see.
It's fun. Yeah.
Please put your questions in the Q&A. If you've got questions from the audience, I'll be taking those in a few minutes. But first, I think we should come back to some of these more technical issues that we haven't really focused on yet. Thermal bridging, weather tightness. Sam, what were some of the trickier technical issues you came across on the V&A? Or can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, with the entrance, I mean, it's a very demanding space. So the museum's open to the public as a museum, and then it shuts at 6, and then almost every night has an event. So if you've ever been there at that time, you see like hundreds of chairs and plants going in. People, you know, like, so part of it was about logistics. So to make something which was aesthetically kind of appropriate, that could also handle, you know, the way and the operational side of the museum. We had issues. We were using these tubes of glass, right? Like some of them big, like 300 mil, and we had to meet building regs, and we were having real trouble trying to get certification for it. And the supplier, a company called Shop, makes these tubes for mines, for lamps in mines. So it's like totally fine, but we couldn't get a certificate. They sent us videos of blowing up tubes with Semtex and showing that it didn't shatter into, you know, sharp pieces. Still, building control like, no, you can't just send us a video of Semtex. Luckily, we found a guy who was researching in the Technical University in Delft, who was doing swing tests and compressive tests on those tubes. So we were very lucky to be able to get certification for it. But I guess that's like one of the tricky things, is like, how do you make something? An entrance is usually very technically complex, you know, a lot of equipment and demand. How can you do all of that stuff without it becoming a total mess? And certainly the V&A, that was, I guess, like what we spent most of our time was just, you know, really trying to ensure that we could integrate all of those different aspects into something without it becoming too, like, lumpy, too much spaghetti, wires and cables and etc.
Retain the elegance of your scheme.
Right, exactly.
Roddy and Sarah, do you want to add anything on some of the technical challenges that you've encountered and how you achieved or resolved thermal bridging? And
well, with us, it was a bit of a Part M challenge because the constraints were very tight. We didn't have enough room to put in a lobby, the lobbied entrance. We had to navigate the existing change in levels from the existing building to the historic lamp, you know, the gardens. We managed to get a 1 in 21 slope, which isn't considered a ramp under Part M. And we couldn't achieve a 1200 sort of level threshold in front of the door. So we ended up with automatic opening doors. It's also a fire escape, so doors had to open outwards. They couldn't open into the building. So yeah, there was quite a lot of challenges across that little bridge link to get it to be compliant and accessible. Yeah. So
there's a question here as well about gradients. And are gradients avoided or on occasion included in an entrance sequence? The V&A has an outside shallow gradient. How did you deal with that, Sam?
Well, I guess, you know, working with existing buildings is that's always the tricky thing, is like how to try and get level access when buildings were built without really thinking about that. So yeah, that's always a consideration, and it's always really, you know, really difficult to try to make buildings which were conceived in one way of operating kind of meet the expectations that we have today. So it's such an important thing to do.
Joanna, do you want to comment on this, some of the technical issues that you've encountered in entrance design?
I really don't, Hattie.
Okay.
Predominantly because we're just starting our concept design. There has been a lot of architectural nuances and issues for sure. For this one, what I can say in terms of the building facade, like that left-hand side portal was already there, so that was useful. As part of the planning application, we realized afterwards that the facade was condemned, that there's not much we can do it, so we actually had the redesign, but so that's not actually an issue, it was an easy thing, but we had to submit the section 73 part of planning, I believe, and that allowed us under that material amendment to change the design. But I believe that the project for the planning permission as it is went quite smoothly. And yeah, that's all I can say for now.
Right. Aaron, what do you want to add on kind of how you see these issues addressed in the myriad of projects you see? What are some of the more challenging ones? Maybe not so much gradient, but thermal bridging concerns, air tightness. What issues come up as you're dealing with different projects?
I suppose one of the things which we do see a lot is just the weather we have in this country. So, and we're dealing, more with weather being brought in rather than the technical side of actual thermal bridging in a facade. But draft lobbies are great. And so that, as you said, so it's a really good way of stopping that cold weather coming in. And revolving doors are also good to a certain extent, but they're obviously not so good from an accessibility perspective. So I'm a big fan of draft lobbies where they're possible. They really do help contain that weather and stop the cold air from coming in. From a ramps perspective, we have quite often seen ramps both internally and externally, and that's something we do see challenges with entrance matting as well. But I think from my limited understanding, steps can be quite aggressive to a disability user. So in this current day and age, we try and avoid those where we can. But certainly anything with a draft lobby is a big help. I suppose that's from my understanding, my experience.
Different aspect of this, with your entrance matting, what sort of regular maintenance is required? How are they cleaned?
Yeah, it's a good question. So they're designed to collect dirt, so they're going to get dirty.
Yeah.
So if the matting is internal, then a regular vacuum will pick up most of the dirt. And some busy buildings will have maybe once a year kind of a heavy duty cleaning, out of hours cleaning, maintenance scheduled. But the bulk of the work is with a daily rotating brush vacuum to pick up that dirt. External products would get a heavy duty clean on a maybe 6 monthly yearly cycle to remove all that dirt and rubbish, which is very important. It's designed to collect dirt, it's going to get dirty, so we do make sure our clients understand that it does need cleaning or emptying, if you like.
Okay, now we've got a question which is more the kind of big picture strategic design question. So this may be back to you, Sam, or Sarah. In large buildings with multiple entrances, such as a department store, should each entrance be given equal architectural significance, or is it more effective to prioritize one main entrance as the primary statement? How do you balance wayfinding and user experience in such cases? Who would like to say something on that? It really depends, doesn't it? It depends on the V&A has two very prominent, very different entrances.
I mean, it's in the V&A's case, it's an accident, really, like of how the building's evolved and also how it's responded to, how the different ways in which people use the city. So the importance of Exhibition Road and Amanda Levy's entrance on Exhibition Road, as opposed to the Cromwell Road, which was the sort of traditional grand entrance, but had sort of fallen behind in terms of the kind of investment and thought they put into it. It's a difficult thing to manage. I mean, I guess one of the ways to think about it is in big building like that is to think of it as an urban object, you know, and to think of it having those kinds of urban complexities, which mean that, you know, it's more, yeah, it's more open-ended, because you can't direct the way in which people are going to interact with the building in such a clear way. Like if they're making more choices, maybe that's a great thing. It's more difficult to say turn left for this and turn right for that, because they might be coming from a different direction. But yeah, if you think of it like a city, it can help determine what might be happening at what point and what you might need to design.
Okay, here's a really quickie question. I'll just take it so we get it out of the way. This is for Aaron. What is the range of depths for different mattings that you have?
So are we talking lengths into a building or depths into a
The depth.
finish? So the product depth itself would be anywhere up to 21 mil. So if we're talking about a cross section of a floor, so 21 mil is maximum.
Okay, great, thanks.
Answer that question.
So here's a question on Alder Castle for one of the two of you. What informed the blue-gray slatting for the extension and bridge sides? It feels unrelated to either the existing building's materials or the historic remains.
Well, as touched on in our presentation, the challenge was we wanted the new extension to very much feel like it was part of the existing building. It wasn't sort of, you know, this new bolt-on. So we took reference from the material palette of the existing building. So the metal is the same color as the existing metal on the facade. And what we wanted to do is really play down this extension and, you know, provide a sort of a neutral backdrop for the landscaping to kind of establish over time and grow, because that was very much driven as well from discussions with the City of London. They very much wanted the planting to kind of, you know, grow up the building and, you know, embed it in the sort of, in the, you know, with the landscaping. So
Also,
yeah.
if I can add on that about the profiles that, as Sarah said, once the planting grow, they're not going to be so, you know, so prominent, but actually the shape, if you see that it's quite like uneven triangular, it's actually borrowed from the shape of the listed church, Grade 1 listed church as you're approaching. So we try to just bring a little bit of the history, very, you know, architectural and very subtle and sort of a metaphorical into the extension.
Thank you. Joanna, I want to come back to you because you've done a lot of work on all this product sourcing. So I'm wondering, over the years that you've been engaged with this issue of transparency, do you see greater transparency from product manufacturers? Is the marketplace changing? What's your, and how do we speed that up? What are your observations?
Very good question. Well, the demand drives the procurement and the product manufacture. Essentially, there's a bigger demand, and the competition is getting larger and larger. So many amazing, innovative products or products that are hugely sustainable. So other manufacturers as well are trying to catch up and constantly innovate something that is more essentially sustainable. What's a good example? Recycle content. Recycle content, we constantly look for something that has a lower embodied carbon. When it comes to the manufacturers, they just under a lot of pressure in terms of the targets for the 2050 as well towards net zero. The materials are in such a large quantities for the projects and buildings procurement, and they're going to be there for a long time. We have a chance to significantly lower those impacts. So it's a regulatory demand as well, even if it's just guideline, the clients more and more are asking for products and transparency. So without that, actually, we would not be able to specify some of the products on a large scale, and it's mostly to the large manufacturers. So INTRAsystems probably know best how many inquiries they're getting more and more, and how much transparency and like quantities of carbon and information they need to share. So
Do you wanna-
absolutely,
Do you want to add anything to that, Aaron? I mean, are you getting more in
We
depth?
certainly are. Yeah. I mean, entrance matting compared to steelwork on a building is very, very small, but we are seeing designers, architectural teams, they want the EPD for entrance matting as well. Whereas a couple of years ago, it was enough to understand that entrance matting is made out of recycled aluminium. It's got recycled fibers in it, and it does such a good job at reducing the wear and tear of the finishes further into the building. That was enough. It's already doing a good job in its own right, and it's made out of recycled materials. But yeah, now we're getting asked, okay, that's great, but also here, where's the EPD for this product? So that's something we have invested in. We do have EPDs in all our products, and we see them downloaded on a very regular basis.
That's really interesting. So Joanna, for those designers who are just at the beginning of trying to understand the complexity of these issues in terms of specifying products with lower environmental impacts, what advice do you have? Like, how do you get your head around this? Where do you start?
There's a few definitions that I would, if I had more time, I would go through to make EPDs a little bit more digestible. I would start with checking the recycled content, checking whether timber has FSC certificates, all that holds manufacturers accountable. Essentially, just dig deeper and ask questions. Even if you don't know the right questions, ask the suppliers that you're calling, especially if it's a product that goes in large quantities onto your project. It has a chance to make a massive impact towards the positive. So I would ask hard questions. Also, in terms of, the good example is a post-consumer recycled content versus pre-consumer recycled content. Recycled content does not mean one and the same thing. Pre-consumer recycled content is essentially an oxymoron. It's manufacture waste that goes back into the production, but it's not from recycled material, actually. Getting yourself familiarized with the measurements on the EPDs, I think, will be hugely useful. Usually it's per 1 kilogram. Essentially, all the greenhouse gas emissions in an EPD are transformed into one measurement, which is 1 kilo of CO2 equivalent. And that's where the numbers are coming from. So that measurement is everywhere on all EPDs, so you should be able to compare. But also AdLib would be hugely helpful. Should you have a look at what we have and what we've gathered over a few years now, please have a look at it once it's available. And you can also basically access the database of our standards, what we have internally, what is a good carbon footprint, what is good, but the icons also can highlight and underline whether it's green or yellow or red. That will give you a threshold of the standards according to the targets and according to the certifications actually that we have in place. So.
Great. We're almost out of time, and I have one last question for Aaron, actually. I wanted to just ask you how listeners, designers can best avail themselves of your expertise during a project. At what stage should they engage with you, and how do you work with people over the course of the life of a project?
Yeah, thanks, Hattie. So I tend to find when we're getting involved in around stage 3 or 4, certainly stage 3 of a project, we get the most success with the overall entrance design because the entrance matting is taken into account nice and early. It gets incorporated into the interior design, the visuals of the building, rather than being thought about months later when we're then struggling to fit in the right amount of matting for that kind of large commercial office space, for example. So the earlier the better, and stage 3 is where we typically would start getting involved. And then we look at more detailed designs on stage 4. We do have a CPD, which is fantastic, and I do get feedback. saying, you actually really got us thinking about the entrance matting here. I didn't realize that there were so many different options. But that's obviously more of a learning piece. If you're working on a project right now, our website, we've tried to make as easy as possible for anyone to dive in, find the product they need based on the type of project they're working on, and download the CAD details or the EPD, and get all the information nice and quickly. So, because we appreciate you're not working on entrance matting for the next 3 weeks, we try to make it nice and easy to get the information you need right now. Obviously, you can drop me an email as well, but the website is very easy and straightforward to use. I regularly meet face-to-face or on Teams just to scan through drawings and put forward ideas based on kind of overall reception, entrance design, based on the different directions people might be walking. So often a quick Teams call is the best way to maximize that entrance space and the entrance matting design.
Great. Well, thank you. I think we are just now on time, so I'm going to draw this to a close. I think we've had a good balance of some real inspiration and some delving into some of the technical issues related to entrance matting, which I certainly wasn't aware of. And I want to thank each of you for your presentations, for your time. Thank you to INTRAsystems for supporting this webinar. And it has been recorded. It will be available on our website, along with a write-up by Pamela Buxton, freelance journalist, who is listening in. So you'll be able to look again at any of the particular aspects, or if you didn't get to watch the whole thing. Thank you very much to everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.